The scandal rocking Israel right now just keeps getting crazier and crazier by the minute as the betrayal of the IDF's top lawyer is being exposed to everybody to see. With all of our focus on our enemies, we often forget that the deep state, the internal systems that control us from within and feed those who hate us, is actually the real problem we all need to be focusing in. Right now, every day, more and more of this corruption is being exposed. The domino pieces are starting to fall one by one, and the house of cards is about to come crashing down. And on today's episode, we are going to be revealing what actually happened, how corrupt this is, and what this means for our future. This is the Meira K Show on JNS TV. Let's dive right in. Imagine waking up every morning in your own luxury apartment in Jerusalem. Sounds like a dream, right? With a dream raffle, that dream could be yours. Win a $1.2 million apartment in the heart of Jerusalem, brand new, fully furnished, and ready for you to move in. Buy your tickets now and we'll double your order. Plus, you'll be automatically entered to win $15,000 in cash if you enter before November 17th. Don't wait. Click on the link in the description to make Jerusalem your home now. The story of the top IDF lawyer is just getting crazier and crazier and crazier by the day as the depths of the lies and the betrayals are making themselves so abundantly clear, it's almost a joke. As we're recording this, Israel keeps on experiencing another scandal exposed by the media, and we are now just seeing how deep the deep state actually goes. You hear me talking about this deep state and here in Israel all the time, but what actually is it? You see, the official definition is a body of people, typically influential members of government agencies or the military, believed by some to be involved in the secret manipulation or control of government policy, i.e. the people that we don't know in the shadows that control us. However, in Israel, it's actually not so secret. Here, those behind the deep state are just pretty open about it. For years, they've just gotten away with pushing the limits of their power. No one can do much about it, and they've thought, why even hide it? The control of powerful agencies over the government has long been a thing, especially in Israel, where we have so many powerful entities outside of those that we elect. Think about the army, the media, the unions, the courts, the intelligence. These are all entities that are super, super important to the country's functioning. The country is dependent on them. However, for these entities, the leadership is not chosen by us, the people, it's internally appointed. You may be wondering why that's a big deal. Well, a democracy's definition is such: a system of government by the whole population or all of the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives, meaning that those people who govern the people should be chosen by the people. Pretty simple. However, in Israel, whilst we do have elected officials, we also have a system, ironically in the name of democracy, to keep those elected in check. You can't have them having too much power, right? And so to do that, you have the courts, the legal system. However, the legal system here is not chosen by the people, like maybe in the United States. They're chosen through internal votes, handed over from judge to judge. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, have the final word on what the government can do. And simply put, that means that they actually have control over the country because their word is the final decision. Now, there are a few things to note on this. The first one being that for years, the courts actually took this responsibility incredibly seriously. They were extra careful to not get involved in anything political, understanding their job is to try and decipher what the law says, not to create new laws, i.e. to not be in the way. This is important because we often think of the Supreme Court as that which decides the law. That's false. Those who can write laws are government officials. The judges in the courts are supposed to try and use their expertise to figure out what the intention of the already written law is and to give their verdict for that. However, over the last few years, they have drastically expanded their areas of jurisdiction, helped by the hero of the left, a judge by the name of Aharon Barak, who decided that he has the right to basically play God. He put into writing so many crazy expansions of their jurisdictions, and surprise, surprise, he was obviously a raging leftist. Reading their verdicts today and comparing them to those of 20 years ago is actually shocking. The difference in the deference they had towards the law is astounding. Nowadays, the Supreme Court intervenes in almost every single decision that is being made by the government, either to block it, to stop it, to change it. Now, you may be wondering to yourself why we're talking about the Supreme Court when we should be talking about the scandal of the leading lawyer for the army. Well, hold your horses, because it's all going to make sense in a second, and everything here is interconnected. Another really important thing to note about the legal system here is that, like in most places in the world, to become a lawyer, you must be heavily educated by the education system, a system which is notoriously left-wing here in Israel, but obviously also universally. We know that campuses are the first place that indoctrination happens, and the reasons for that are many, but mainly because of the prestige that comes with being educated. It sets you apart. You have a degree from Harvard and makes you almost undebatable intellectually. That's the kind of elitism that the left flourishes on. Look, we are the best just because we are the best. Now, one of the best examples of this sort of institution is, exactly, Harvard. We all saw the encampments and the anti-Semitism and the insanity of the heads of the university being unable to condemn the anti-Semitism as it depends on the context. Till this day, I think many of us wonder how it is that Harvard, of all places, created such a lack of uneducated humans. But that's for another time. Because what you don't know is that Harvard also hosted a partnership with a program called the Wexner Foundation under their leadership and political department. What is this foundation? Well, it's a fund run by some very, very wealthy, lefty, progressive Jews that aims to train Israeli leadership, i.e., control Israel with their own agendas. They funded masters and leadership projects for the elite here in Israel, who all then returned to their positions as heads of the IDF and many other sectors. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually true. Ehud Barak, you know, that revolting excuse of an ex-prime minister who is highly involved in the Jeffrey Epstein case and who has been claiming we are a genocidal country. He's one of the examples of their graduates. We have others, like Yair Golan. Remember him? He claims Israel likes killing babies as a hobby. I think you get where I'm going with this. This foundation never released to the public what and how it trained these leaders here in Israel, what they were teaching them. And just FYI, this is important, they separated from Harvard after the anti-Semitism scandal last year. But we have all known how deeply anti-Israel Harvard has been for years. Unfortunately, the Wexner Foundation is no different. They have a different understanding of what is good for Israel than what we, the people, might actually believe. Here is one of the main philosophies of this department in Harvard. This is something that they coined and trained, a belief or a doctrine, that those in bureaucratic positions are actually much better suited for government and leadership, as unlike politicians who come and go, they have years of experience and the ability to build up their power, i.e., those in positions unelected should actually be the ones controlling the country. Now, it's not going to surprise you that this left-wing network and funding machine has an alumnus group of tens of IDF chiefs of staff, top commanders, many of who were responsible specifically for the Gaza borders in the years leading up to October 7th, Supreme Court judges, and of course, heads and people high up in our intelligence. Almost every senior position in Israeli security is held by a graduate of the Wexner Foundation. And you must ask yourself why there's a lefty billionaire bankrolling all of our security personnel. You aren't wrong to be questioning this. If you're starting to get where I'm going with this, well, 10 points to Gryffindor. Simply put, throughout almost all of our non-government institutions, we have people in senior positions who believe, or who have been indoctrinated to believe, that they should really be making the decisions for how this country should be run. Not those who are elected. In fact, those elected are often seen as a hindrance to their power. Take, for example, Benjamin Netanyahu. As we have seen, they subscribe to beliefs and theories that are not just wrong, but are flat out dangerous. They have, in the best case scenario, good but mistaken intentions. And in the worst case scenario, they're actively being funded by people who want to control this country and who are actively anti-Israel. But hold your horses, because this is just the tip of the surface for the deep state. To keep yourself in positions of power, being funded for a few years by a network and having good friends and a foundation isn't going to cut it. You need a much, much more extensive system that will allow you to keep the power, to not get in trouble, to keep potential threats to your power out of the picture, and to keep the public unaware. And for that, you need our enemy number one, media. And you also need legal power, you need money, and you need to be able to exert control without anyone noticing. For years, Israel has been run by a group of elitists in the media, in the news, in the education systems, in the legal systems, in the finance sector, in the security, the internal and the external, and in the IDF. It's a house of cards with a tight-knit group of nothing other than criminals who think they control the country despite not having the jurisdiction for it. And they will go unbelievably far to keep this house from crashing. They might even put the blame on IDF soldiers. This week, the first card fell, leading to a really quick domino effect. This is why the story of the Patsarit, this lead attorney of the IDF, is so much bigger than people realize. Because it is the beginning of the end of this elitist control, of the deep state as they have known it. The story is so peculiar, so ridiculous. The blatant feeling of untouchability that this group of people feels they have has become so obvious to all of us. The holes are immense. It's now a week since she's been arrested, and she has had 2 suicide attempts. Right after we recorded last week's episode, it was made public that she had disappeared. Hours and hours of searching, and finally she was found by the sea. Her clothes are completely dry, her hair is soaking wet, and she's left a note by her car, which was apparently a suicide note. The big surprise, however, that her phone was nowhere to be found. This led to a massive manhunt to try and find the iPhone. Divers and metal detectors. I mean, seriously, it was like a scene out of a movie. Money promised to anybody who could find it because the evidence was clearly there. For a week, they tried to find this phone. They were also looking for her Apple Watch, which in the end was found and given to the police. After days of searching, an Israeli woman actually just chanced upon it. It was a washed-up phone by the beach with a picture of her in the front. And voila, the evidence was there. Now, you may be wondering if the phone was destroyed. Don't worry, it still works. Now, why is this story so insane? Well, besides the obvious that she pretended to kill herself despite claiming it was a legit attempt, why is it that the most high-profile criminal case that Israel has known in years, the police allowed for her to be released from custody with her phone intact? Who and which people pulled strings to let her take the main piece of evidence home with her, only for her to attempt to destroy it and then use massive government funds to have the police search for it? I don't know if you remember the story of, let's say, Tzvika Klein, the journalist for J-Post, but his phone was the first thing that they took, even without a warrant. But here, nada. She's then released to house arrest. Again, a weird fact considering that she had allegedly attempted to take her life and disappeared for hours. Lo and behold, a few days later, it was announced to the public that she had now actually attempted to take her life with pills. Again, why wasn't she under proper surveillance? This is now the most intense case of all time. All eyes are on her. Of course, her mental health is going to be a little bit off. The contrast of how they are treating her case and other cases is just insane. Look, I'm not even going to attempt to get into the details of her lack of integrity and the revoltingness of the cases that she has tried soldiers for outside of this story. I want us just to focus on the double standard. The fact that the female attorney general, who was her direct line of command and a close friend of hers, has still not officially been kicked off of the case, despite her blatantly obvious conflicts of interest. It's a matter of time before she's removed, but the fact that she wasn't removed first and has been allowed to change things up is crazy. By the way, her almost unmatched power to do what she wants was given to her by the same Aharon Barak who expanded the Supreme Court jurisdiction. An example of the craziness of the deep state is that the Attorney General is actually appointed by the government, not voted in, but the Supreme Court is blocking them from firing her. Legally, they should be able to fire anyone they appoint, but not here, because the Attorney General is a massively important player in allowing those who control the country to stay in power. She keeps the government from intervening and acts in direct cohorts with the Supreme Court. We now also know that she has been working to protect the powers that be in the IDF. By the way, it's the Supreme Court that changed the rules in the hierarchy, making it so that the IDF's head lawyer doesn't answer to the IDF chief of staff, which would make sense, but rather to the Attorney General, a government official. A weird change to make, but not if you want the legal system to have its fingers in the IDF pie. He who controls the military controls the country. Through the legal system, they stay in power. Think about it. If you want to break as many rules as you want, the only way to get away with that is to make sure that those who are in charge of the law are on your side. And so how did all of this happen? Well, the first domino piece to fall was actually the head of the internal intelligence, the Shabak. Do you remember how hard they fought to keep Ronen Bar in place, to not allow the new right-wing David Zini into his position? Well, because if people are breaking the law, then you need someone to discover that, and that is the Shabak's job. If they do the research, if they don't look into your transgressions, then you're good to go. But they failed, thank God. They tried to replace the responsibility of October 7th on the government and not on the blatant intelligence failure. They tried and tried and tried and it didn't work. They pulled all the tricks. They used the media to destroy Zini's name. They got the Supreme Court to try and intervene. The Attorney General as well, but it failed. The people and the government saw through it and pushed through the hullabaloo to get Zini appointed. And so, when the story of the Patsarit landed on his desk just 3 days into the job, instead of turning a blind eye, which is clearly what Ronen Bar did, he did something about it. Down comes domino piece number 2. The legal system's corruption is exposed. They lie with no shame, even to the holies of holies, the Supreme Court. Israel's needs are secondary to their own whims. They are above the law. The IDF legal team are actually not on the IDF side. Did you know that in the current indictment against the IDF soldiers in the Steteman story, there is no mention of any sort of sexual abuse because there is no evidence of this. More to the fact, they were arrested before a person who apparently, allegedly, and I don't know why I said person, he's a terrorist, the terrorist allegedly even said that maybe there had been a form of sexual abuse. And in addition, do you know that that terrorist has now been released to Gaza? So there is actually no real case. These soldiers were arrested on a trumped-up charge that has zero evidence, that has no person who's even come forward to say that this happened. They then coerced after tens of meetings with this terrorist to get him to admit that maybe there's been sexual abuse, despite the fact that there was no such thing. It's most likely that he tried to smuggle something into the prison and in a routine checkup tried to get it out. And that's where the damage happened. He had surgeries, so much evidence in place, doctors who tracked him, who all said this hasn't happened. And the person who came up with the story of the sexual abuse was, surprise, surprise, a volunteer from Doctors Without Borders, one of the most lefty organizations in the entire world, who has done nothing but try to destroy Israel's reputation and make up this whole sexual allegation thing against IDF soldiers time and time and time and time again. Why was that kind of person allowed into the prison cell of the Nukhba terrorists? We won't know. But it is all fake. There is no such evidence. Do you know that in the video, when they're holding up their defense systems as if to hide themselves from the camera, that's actually the routine way that they do checks for every single one of the prisoners because they have to do it publicly, but they try and keep them private. It's an act of decency. This whole thing is so crazy, but every step of the legal procedures that should have been in place, thrown out of the window. And now the public knows this. And then the third piece comes down. As we are all watching in shock at how clearly corrupt the entire investigation is, and the glaring difference between how she is being treated versus, let's say, how the IDF soldiers were treated, whilst here is an ample evidence that there was none. They are treated as guilty regardless of innocence. And here, despite the obvious guilt, she is being treated as completely innocent, at the cost, let me add, of the investigation. Domino number 4. The legal counsel for the government is happy to continue to cover up for her. The Attorney General cares so little for the truth and that she is the one who has been blocking our government throughout the whole war and refusing to step down. She is the one who has postponed the arrest of the Patsarit, allowing her to disrupt the investigation. She, in my opinion, should be arrested for tampering with evidence. Now they're looking for an external investigative team to figure out what really happened, and suddenly she doesn't have as much power as she's been holding on to for so long. What happened in Steteman? We will soon come to know all the evidence, but for now, it seems like a damning story that was concocted just to cover up for these crazies out there who break the law. Then, piece number 5, seemingly unrelated, but we have massive arrests here. 350 heads of municipalities, union workers, are brought in last week for questioning as it becomes clear that, surprise, surprise, they have been abusing the positions of power to benefit financially and give their friends jobs. What a shocker. The union single-handedly has the power of all the workers of Israel and can push the government to basically do their bidding or they stop the economy. You have to remember the head of the union, who's currently still being detained, Arnon Bar David, joined the strikes for the hostage protests, which tells you where he stands politically, claiming, obviously it wasn't political. Really? Another example of gross overuse of power by an unelected official. And guess why this story is happening now? Well, because we have Zini, domino piece number 1, who isn't allowing for any of this ludicrous to continue. And that leads us to domino piece number 6, the corrupt Netanyahu case. One of the lead prosecutors admits that they investigated out of which they were allowed to do. Surprise, surprise. This case is all fabricated to keep Netanyahu down at the cost of the safety of the country. He, till this day, needs to ask requests from the courts to go to important security meetings, letting the whole world know what he's doing. And now even Trump is intervening. Keep in mind, one of the unofficial leaders of the left, the president, hasn't done a thing to stop those bogus trials during the war, despite being able to. The media and the Supreme Court are the next pieces that need to fall. We're slowly seeing the changes. We are seeing the news outlets who lie and cover up versus those JNS that actually care to share the truth. The Israeli media will fall soon, just like in the States. It will become accepted that the mainstream media lies for its own gain and to push their own agendas. The Supreme Court is next, and they're going to be a tough fight. Do you remember how they lit the country on fire to stop the small reforms that were put in place to try and keep them a little bit in check? Well, now you know why. Because each piece of control depends on the whole system staying whole, and that has already started crashing. The deep state is just that. It's deep, and it's being exposed. And whilst it might take a long time to dismantle this evil, the Jew-hating corrupt class that thinks that they can control us, disrupt them, we will. I mean, they have just announced the replacement for the Patsarit, the lawyer, and it's none other than a Wexner Foundation alum. Surprise, surprise. We still have lots of work to do, but at least the conversation is starting. Always remember, when they fight back hard, it's because they are afraid. We are going to see such an insane amount of corruption being exposed, and it's going to be very frustrating. The IDF cover-up doesn't just start here. They are directly, in my opinion, responsible for the hostages, for everything that went wrong, and I am sure and convinced of it that this is story number 1 of tens of things that internally the legal system did to actively hinder the IDF's ability during the war. And to me, that is absolute treason. But we can't pretend anymore. We're just being shown directly just how corrupt this all is, and that at the end of the day, thank God, the biggest card they have already lost. They need the public to trust them to keep this all up, and that trust is eroding more and more every single day. The change is upon us, my friends, and I, for one, can't wait for the house of cards to crash down. Slowly, 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 but then all at once. I'm Ira K, and I will see you next time.